Welcome everybody to the TFRP group. This is our very first post. As we approach Yom Kippur, we're going to be saying in this group some very confronting, maybe even uncomfortable ideas sometimes. We're going to be addressing some very real issues. We're going to be saying complex ideas that sometimes are going to be hard to grasp. They're not necessarily ideas that most people need to know, but my goal is that they reach the people that absolutely need to hear them. And when you hear today's message, maybe you'll understand a little bit more what we're referring to. So today we're going to start with Reb Tzaddok HaKohein of Lublin, who is a brilliant theologian and tzaddik. Rav Tzadok says that the main teshuva is ... So if you had to guess, what is the main teshuva? You would think the main teshuva that you have to do is to cry your eyes out, regret and swear you'll never do anything again. And those things might be important. But Rav Tzadok says the main teshuva that a person can do is to come to the recognition that his sins and mistakes were God's will for him. He quotes a Gemara in Brachos that supports the idea of how God indirectly causes our behavior despite us having free will. And Rav Tzadok further brings in Arizal that supports that idea. It's a very fascinating idea that even our sins and our mistakes were God's will. Ultimately, God is in charge of the world, God runs creation, and somehow we wound up making these mistakes. And so in a sense, this is God's will. Our mistakes are God's will. After he brings a Gemara to support this idea and an Arizal, he says that because our mistakes are God's will, they are meritorious acts, and the person will merit complete atonement. And he brings a support for this as well from the avoda of Yom Kippur, as the Torah describes it, and from a Ramban, when it talks about the mitzvah of throwing the goat over the cliff, right? The original scapegoat. And there the Ramban says that even though the way the Torah describes this mitzvah is that we're somehow giving some sort of power to the evil forces, whatever that means, by feeding them this goat and giving them this goat. But whatever that means, the point for us is that God is seemingly commanding us to do what seems to be like idolatry. But because God commanded it, it becomes a mitzvah. The takeaway for us is that a lot of real people, because that's who these messages are for, people that you and I know, maybe it's us, we've made some very serious mistakes in our lives. Maybe not even one, maybe many, maybe hundreds. And as we approach Yom Kippur, we can know that the main teshuva is to return to God, but the way Rav Tzadok says it is to return our consciousness of our mistakes to God, and to realize that even those mistakes were part of God's will. God wanted them to happen. They had to happen to make us who we are, to make the world operate the way it does, and ultimately it's all part of God's plan, and that's what's so beautiful. We should merit to have this consciousness, this higher awareness of our mistakes. And then we can go into Yom Kippur having a good mood, having hope, and looking forward to a new year, and having a beautiful new view on our mistakes.